Hey guys, welcome back to Matthew's Ballistics. We are headed to the range to go test out these 80.5 grain Berger target hollow points. They're Fullbore target hollow points. So I kind of talked about it a little bit as far as the loading goes, and I'm starting out at 24.0 grains of LeverEvolution. The reason why I chose LeverEvolution powder as the powder for this is because I'm running a pretty short barrel. It's a 16.5 inch barrel on this Ruger American Ranch. But in theory, and it's actually worked for me before in testing as well, but in theory, running a powder that's a little bit slower on the burn rate chart with heavier bullets will allow you to get a little bit more velocity out of them without too much pressure buildup. So that's what I'm going to try to do. That's the goal right now, is to try to get out there and try to see what kind of velocity we get and look for pressure signs, and also look for accuracy, because 80.5 grains is a real heavy bullet, a real long bullet. On the Berger's website, even on the box, it says minimum twist is 1 1/8 for these bullets, and the rifle, the Ruger American Ranch 5.56, is a 1 1/8 twist barrel. So hopefully it works out good, and hopefully they shoot good. We're gonna find out. I brought a bunch of just a bag full of 55 grain FMJs that I loaded with CFE 223, and they're loaded to the maximum book data. They shoot good. I mean, they're sub-minute rounds, or they shoot, well, I say that they shoot about a minute of angle, about an inch or so at 100 yards, which is perfectly fine for all intents and purposes for those. Out of this gun, they shoot about a minute, which I'm actually really happy with this gun, because I've shot some other match grade target bullets out of it, and it's a nice shooting gun. It does very well, holds a real nice tight grip. The barrel obviously was pretty decent quality, and that's one of the things that as far as most people that do reviews on the Ruger American series of rifles, is that the best part about the gun is the barrel quality. As far as how tight the action is, it's not blueprinted, they're just mass produced, and the trigger quality it's all right, but the whole reason to buy one comes down to the barrels that they put on those rifles are very good for the money. When you're talking about buying a sub $600 rifle, you get your money's worth out of the barrel, I think. Other than that, the stocks on them are just, molded, formed plastic stocks or whatever. There's nothing to write home about. They do make the firearm actually pretty lightweight, which is good if you're like backpacking and whatnot. It makes a great backpacking gun, especially with the 16-inch barrel. It's like a really packable, small package that is capable of really, really good accuracy and precision. So that's kind of why I really like this rifle. It's going to be great for backpacking, and as far as the area that I live in, and here in Arkansas, I mean, with the right bullet type in that rifle, I mean, you could take down pretty much any game with it. As far as me personally hunting is, in the past, all of the deer that I've ever shot and killed were with a 45 grain ballistic silver tip in a single shot 223 with a bull barrel, and it worked great. Of course, my longest shot, was only like about 40 yards or so. I've never had to shoot further than that to hunt. So, I mean, you got to think about it that way. It's like, do you really need a 300 Win Mag in your area? Now, I mean, if you're out in like, Arizona or Utah or something, or like North Dakota or Wyoming, yeah, it would be useful to have that kind of range out there. But here in Arkansas, I mean, the maximum distance I'm ever going to have to be able to make a shot on a deer really is probably going to be under 100 yards. So I don't really need a big shoulder stomping gun to get the job done. And the 223 has been more than enough. I've never had a deer run on me. I mean, had one run a little ways, but we're talking like it ran 30 or 40 yards and then fell over. But that ballistic silver tip bullet too worked great. And typically, I mean, it's like a varmint bullet, but the 45 grain one was running about 3,300 feet per second or so out of that rifle, and it basically, the hydrostatic damage that it did was actually really impressive on a deer. It was quite something to look at there. But if you're trying to hunt deer with an FMJ or something like that, I wouldn't recommend it unless you were just like trying to make headshots on them or something. But that's a whole different thing. So getting out here today with these 80.5 grain Bergers, I'm hoping to get the velocity up in these about 2,700. I know they're heavy for a short barrel, and velocity is going to be really limited, and it's going to get to a point where, you know, running more powder is not really going to help, because the powder, at some point, you're not going to be burning all of it in the barrel, and it's going to be burning outside the barrel, and it's not going to really get you any more velocity out of that round. So if I can get 2,700 out of it, I'll be happy. If I get anything more than that, even better. But I am running 50 grain quantity VMAX out of this barrel right at 3,000 feet per second. So, and those are probably what I'll hunt with, is the 50 grain VMAX this year, or the 95 grain VMAX in the 6.5 Creedmoor. I really kind of want to hunt with that round. It's a little bit heavier, way more power than the 5.56 will produce, but you know, and I've got an area that I'm actually going to hunt that I might get a little bit longer shot than, you know, 30 or 40 yards, so it may be beneficial to try to use that bullet just to make sure I don't have to track one down, you know. So I get over here, pick my dad up, we're gonna go to the range. He always comes with me and he spots for me, and yeah, maybe he'll bring one of his guns. I don't know what he's got planned, but anyways, we'll see you at the range. Alright guys, so I didn't get to film any shooting. The range was pretty busy, and I don't like to film when there's a bunch of people there shooting. This was where I was impacting when I was re-zeroing my rifle, and then I re-zeroed back up to here. These are just with some 55 grain FMJs, loaded to about 2,780 feet per second out of the 16-inch Ruger. So not a great group size, but you know, they're 55 grain FMJs. Plus all of these were crimped rounds, with a Lee factory crimp. Now, moving on to the 80 grain Bergers. So you saw where I was impacting about center with the 55 grains at 2780-ish on the velocity. Well, with the 80.5 grain Bergers, every one of them, they all impacted higher, which is interesting, but at the same time, the ballistic coefficient on the 55 grains are, I don't know, 0.185 or something. They're really low, and the ballistic coefficient on these is 0.441, which is really high. So it makes sense that even though they're going at a slower velocity, that they're actually still going to impact higher, about between an inch and a half higher. And the reason why is because they're a much more efficient bullet. They don't drop as much. They just fly a little flatter, a little straighter. So at 24 grains of powder, and also I seeded these at about 2.545 inches of COAL. They kind of range between 2.545 and 2.547, which is right at where it was touching the lands and the rifling, right? So I'm using Hodgdon's LeverEvolution powder, and I started at 24 grains, and these are the targets for the non-turned groups. So the 25 rounds I tested here were not neck turned, and the primer pockets were not uniformed, or the flash holes were not uniformed. All right, and these are all shot at 100 yards. So at 24 grains, we started here, 5-shot group, and then at 24.5 grains, there's your 5-shot group. Down here, 25 grains of powder, a 5-shot group, and 25.5 grains of powder, a 5-shot group. So what I noticed was when I got above the 24.5 grains was everything started going vertical as far as dispersion goes. And then this one here at 26 grains of powder, a 5-shot group. So we'll get into the velocities here in just a second, but I want to go ahead and go over the other targets on the ones that I did turn the necks on. And we're going to look at those right here real quick. So these are the ones that I turned the necks on, and notice that the impact is actually a little lower. It's actually closer to 0 with the 55 grain bullets. So anyways, these are the ones that the necks were turned on them. I uniformed the primer pockets, and I also uniformed the flash holes on these. So if you look at 24 grains, actually there's 6 shots on this one and only 4 on this one because I made a mistake and aimed at the wrong target when I was shooting the second target there. So one of these bullets is on this target. Anyways, 24 grains, 24.5, 25 grains, 25.5 grains, and then our 26 grain target. Okay, so let's get in the book here. And this is my range book. This is just for recording velocities, basically, and recording temperature and barometric pressure of the day and all that. So we started at 62 degrees Fahrenheit, and 8.5 grain is Lake City Brass 2011. It's been fired once through this rifle. So on the 24 grain group, we averaged 2,465 feet per second with a 79 foot per second extreme spread, which is huge. 24.5 grains, we averaged 2,513 with a 73 foot per second extreme spread. And then 25 grains, we got 2,534 at 83 foot per second extreme spread. 25.5 grains, we got a 2,595 foot per second. Now, it was important to note that 2 of those were errors. So it was only for 3 rounds, and we got a 66 foot per second extreme spread. And then at 26 grains, we got 2,634 average with 106. So now we're going to go to the ones we turned the necks on and uniform the primer pockets and the flash holes. 24 grains averaged 2,448 with an 89 foot per second extreme spread. With the 24.5s, we averaged 2,473 with a 90 foot per second extreme spread. 25 grains, we averaged 2,523 with a 79 foot per second extreme spread. And 25.5 grains, we averaged 2,603 with a 40 foot per second extreme spread. And then the last group, at 26 grains, averaged 2,671 with a 22 foot per second extreme spread. So it's kind of weird, but the non-neck turn group in the lower powder charges actually got more velocity. And then the neck turn group in the higher powder charge area got more velocity, and also a much lower extreme spread. So I know we're still well below pressure threshold even at 26 grains with this bullet, based on the way that the cartridges look. So I'm thinking that I'm going to go up another half a grain, go to 26.5, and then that'll be the only next big jump. So we'll go to 26.5, and then we'll go up 0.2 of a grain up each time from there. We'll go up by 0.2, so it'll go 26.5, and then 26.7, 26.9, 27.1, and so on until we reach our pressure threshold, and then we'll back down just a hair. And then, when the primers start looking kind of flat, that's kind of where I like to load at, or it was a little bit right before they start flattening out. So we'll load them up until we get to that point, and then we'll back the pressure down. And I guess I'm going to try to keep using the same 50 pieces of brass for this testing, and keep doing the testing the same way, where it's 25 of the ones that aren't turned, and then 25 of the ones that are turned and uniformed and all that. So we'll see how it goes. And then after that, the group sizes on here, they're averaging about 1 inch, about 1 minute of angle for group size, so it's not terrible. I am shooting this out of a Ruger American Ranch 5.56, and I think I'm having a little bit of some harmonic issues with the rifle bipod bouncing off of a wooden bench, because it's a pretty light rifle, so any type of energy transfer through the rifle, through the stock, and through the bipod going into the bench is getting reverberated right back through it, and it's going to cause a few issues. But if you don't zero your gun on the bipod and the way you're going to shoot it out in the field or whatever, if you're shooting it off a rest, then you're going to get different results. Like if you were to put it in a lead sled and then zero it and then take it and shoot it on a bipod, it's going to impact differently. So that's one thing to think about. And then after I get the load to where I want it to be, the velocity and stuff around close to the upper pressures, I'm going to start adjusting the seating depth back a little bit off the lands, because right now we're touching the lands, and I'm going to start backing the seating depth back off of that, and to try to tune and tighten the group a little bit. And we're going to get it as good as we can doing that before I invest any money in buying a barrel tuner for this rifle, which that would be my, after I tune the ammo, that would be the next go, is to go to a tuner. Other than that, one thing I noticed with this powder is that as the chamber heats up, there's a pretty good jump in velocity from round to round, and you can actually, if you go back through there, and I'll post these pictures up of these targets at the end, and so you can actually really take a look at them. But you'll notice that from the first round to the third or fourth round, the pressures are just constantly increasing with every shot, or the velocities are constantly increasing with every shot. So the LeverEvolution powder, it seems to me like it's pretty temperature sensitive, which is not the most ideal thing. And I think in testing, I'll start actually timing my rest in between shots in the next test group, where I'll shoot one and then rest 30 seconds to a minute, shoot the next, and 30 seconds to a minute, shoot the next, and so on. And to try to keep the temperatures as stable as possible, and try to keep the extreme spread and velocity a little lower, because as you notice in these targets, most of the spread, most of the group size of being bigger is caused by the vertical dispersion, which most of the time is just caused by velocity differences, big extreme spreads in velocity. So other than that, I think that's going to be all for this video. Hopefully next weekend we'll go and test it again and see what happens. So we'll see you next time in the next video. If you got any questions or comments, anything you want to leave below, let me know, and have a good day.